I don't have anything to talk about today. I just want to hang out, just you and me, just chill, to be able to enjoy a comfortable silence with someone. I do actually do some of these, believe it or not, for the poor production quality and everything. There are a number of these videos that I don't upload because they're just bad. Like, even by my standards, they're bad. Yeah, no one's gonna watch this. Nothing of value was lost. I mean, technically, I subscribe to the idea that there are kernels of wisdom in many things, and in things that wouldn't normally have them. So I can just talk, and hopefully things are useful. That seems to be the case, at least when I do. So I've been thinking about a few things. I realized that I haven't. Sally sent me a Lisp sticker. I hit him up on Twitter, and he had some extra ones, so it was pretty cool. I got that, and that was the Lisps. It was difficult not to put the Lisp sticker over top of my Python sticker. I have my I'll add a picture of my laptop top to my to the description here. But it was difficult not to put that Lisp sticker over top of the Python sticker, because I just find Python annoying, but it's still good. It's actually quite well featured, and it's limited in syntax. It's fine. It's easy to work with and around. So I have some tweaks to make to some of that. Speaking of Python, some of that Python code for the KiCad footprint snapping for angled footprints. So I'll make some additions to that. Oh, that looks really nice. The passage of years has been something that I've had more awareness of lately in the past few years. The idea that if you do a thing now, next year you can work on it a little bit more. And I'm realizing more that, having this project, like the Vexus project, I'm gluing to it right now, so I'm gonna try not to touch it. Hey, so here's my note to myself then, since I'm not gonna be able to touch the Vexus. Set up the weekend reminder and list of weekend items. Like the Vexus project, I realize that I just, I work on it little bits at a time. And I realize that there are many things, it's really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, especially when there's emergencies and stuff you have to deal with at work. But over a long enough timeline, if you do dedicate, 5% of your time, or even 1% of your time toward working on the bigger projects, instead of thinking, oh gee, well, I only have 15 minutes to work on this, or I only have half an hour to work on this, therefore it makes better sense for me to not work on it. If you give it a little bit at a time, you can make progress over the course of years. I look at my garden, and I think about all the failures that the garden had before that. And I think, well, let's try something next year. And the idea that you have, your life is going to pass. Time will continue onward. And, the best time to start is today. It always is. The best time to start is right now. So the idea that you can start getting into something and then move on, and then, come back to it later, as long as you do come back to it, you can make progress over the course of years. It wasn't very many years ago that I was a very very uneducated programmer. I was purely practical. I had almost no theory, and I had very little cross training. And after I started focusing on it, and after I started, actually dedicating time to listening to YouTube videos of people talking about these different, even just the different programming paradigms, you get better. It really is just self-improvement comes from little bits at a time, and it's not sexy, and it's not flashy, and it's kind of boring, and it doesn't feel awesome. It's like you work on something, you make no progress, and you work on something and you make no progress, and you work on something and you make no progress, and it just sucks until you actually do make the progress. Or you make a little progress and then it's 2 steps back, but you forget that you're learning along the way. You're improving your knowledge, you're having more experience with it. There's an old saying that keeps coming up. It's inch by inch, it's a cinch. And cinch just is slang for English slang or American slang for it's easy. So if you do it 1 inch at a time, you'll eventually make it. It's easy. It's actually, frankly, it's probably even easier to do things a little bit at a time. I tend to be someone who goes, dives in head first into things, and I'll burn myself out easy. Yeah, every single time. I'll burn myself out. And I've only just recently gotten the ability to kind of manage that, and I'm not sure if that's just because I've been forced to not dive into things because my time is so stretched that I can only kind of dip my toe into different things at different times, and make little leaps of progress separated by weeks at a time. The main thing for me, especially for someone in the field of programming or anything where your architecture is logic based, is if you're not able to think about the thing over time, then you're just gonna have a bad time with it. You're not gonna make the progress that you want. You need to be able to have the problem outlined in your head, and that way, once it's outlined, your brain can kind of fill in the gaps. And to have a workspace that is persistent, because I've set up programming environments before, and it can be a gigantic pain to set things up, get your IDE or your text editor working correctly, get all the files open, all the relevant files open, get your shortcuts down, be able to flip between the files and your reference information, have all the windows up that you need, and then it's like, oh, well, I have to reboot my computer, and all of that setup time is just gone. And when you have to come back to it, it's like, oh, let me check on that real quick, and I have to set up my text editor, I have to set up my, put the hooks back in my IDE, I have to get up the SQL connection, I have to open up those 4 browser windows to all the things that I need to reference while I'm looking this or while I'm working on this, and it's all setup time. And if you had a separate computer, and this is super simple, if you had a separate computer with some cheap monitors set up, you can get like USB video cards, just have those monitors up and just have everything up that you need. When it's all in front of your face, it's a lot easier to work with. And that's just your workspace, and you can let it sit there. If you have a sufficiently, useful tower computer, and I say that because it shouldn't be a laptop with limited screen real estate. You should be able to get, depending on your operating system, different desktops, and set those up as different workspaces. And I've talked about this before. The workspace idea is an excellent one. The multiple desktops. Windows has I think it has software that lets you add multiple desktops to your environment, but it's the multitasking that gets to be kind of a problem. You do need some horsepower to be able to leave those intensive resource hog programs open for a long time, because it's a lot easier to have your entire programming workspace open in one area and then flip over to viewing Twitter or watching a video or doing something else, and then be like, all right, work time, and we're back. You have everything set up again. It's all just it's all overhead. It's all travel time. It's all workflow cruft. It's nonsense. It's things that don't need to happen, and it's all like I'm traveling to work right now. I take up this time traveling to work by talking to you, by getting these thoughts out of my head, and by working through different ideas and bringing up new ideas. Different ideas pop into my head while I'm talking to you all, and it's pretty cool. It's useful. This time is useful. Now, if I could snap my fingers and be from home to work, that would be awesome, and I would be happy to do it, but I would lose this time. So making use of the time is my goal with these with these vlags. That's a XKCD reference that I'm keeping it going, and I don't quite know why, just for consistency's sake at this point. So the idea that you can squeeze in these little bits of learning, these little idea sessions, as long as you save your place, as long as you save your space in your brain. And I do that with whiteboards, I do that with significant notes, I do that with writing instructions to myself, because my biggest problem was wading back into a project and having to, grok the universe in order to say, oh, well, I just need to change this then. Because when you play that catch-up game, when I spend a lot of time in a program or in a project, and I know all the ins and outs, and I'm like, oh, I need to make this change, but I know that if I make it this way, that'll break that over there. And then if my computer reboots at that point, or if it's time to go, or if I'm almost out of time, it's time for me to finish, I know that I have to save I need a mental bookmark for, hey Troy, how's it going? And you can see this in some of my coding streams. It's like, hey Troy, we need to do this, and I know you're going to want to do this, but don't, because this will break this. So make sure you do it this way. Thanks, have a nice day. Or I'll have, even to the point where I write literal pseudocode in my note-taking program, in my notes. If this, then that, then you need to do this, and if not, then put an extra catch in there. And I'm like, I open it up, and my brain is outside of the project, so I don't quite know what's going on. But Troy said to do this, so I'll just go ahead and do that. And as I'm doing it, I bring myself kind of back up to speed. It's the best way to kind of hit the ground running in your projects, because otherwise you have this lead up time where you wade back into the pool, and the pool is kind of cold, so you're like very slowly at a time, and it just wastes a lot of time. If it takes you 15 minutes to wade into the pool, and it takes you 5 minutes to figure out what you need to do next, and it takes you you've basically got like 5 minutes to code out of a 30-minute segment of time that you had. So taking out that overhead by getting your brain into a project and then making that to-do list at the end of it. Maybe you get into a project but you don't even do anything on the project. You don't make any progress. All you do is write a to-do list. I need to do this. Here are my thoughts on this idea. I kind of have to do it this way, but I'm a little worried about that. Okay, next thing, I need to do this, but this is the best way to do it, but there might be problems here or there, or it might be okay. Maybe here's a good way to do it. Here's some quick logic. If this, then that. It's easy to do that, and then come back later to it and say, all right, I need to write logic that does this. Okay, here's how I write it. Here's how I test it. Let's see what happens. Inch by inch, it's a cinch.